Dear students, once again welcome back to a new session of history class. I hope that all of you are keeping fine. As a continuation to the previous class, today we are going to revise the second chapter, and our second chapter is about the growth of nationalism. When we were dealing with the First War of Independence 1857, there we have seen a particular point, the consequences of the First War of Independence 1857. Under this particular title, there we have seen a particular point, the growth of nationalism, or the growth of nationalism started to take place in the history of India as a result of the First War of Independence 1857. That's why First War of Independence 1857 is being considered as a milestone in the history of India. It has got its own impact in our society. People started to feel like it's my country and it's my nation. So the feeling of nationalism started to take place in the history of India from or after the First War of Independence 1857. So in the second chapter, we are going to see, or we are going to revise about the growth of nationalism, or how nationalism had taken place, why it grown, how it has got supported, all those different points which we are going to discuss in the second chapter. It is just a revision, and I hope all of you have already studied this chapter, but this revision will help you to look back to those points which you have already studied. Before we go into the different topics of this chapter, let me ask you a question. How can you define nationalism? Or what do you mean by nationalism? Nationalism can be defined as a feeling of oneness of the people who are living in a particular geographical area. The people will be having diversities on the basis of different factors. Factors like on the basis of religion, caste, language, traditions, customs, different historical elements. All these things can become a diversity among the people. But still, even though there are these kinds of diversities, people will be having a oneness towards their nation, especially the people who are living under a particular or living in a particular geographical area. I hope you understood what is meant by nationalism. As a part of the revision, we are going to study, or we are going to revise different factors which led to the growth of nationalism. And the first point is economic exploitation of India. British people remained in India just with the motive to make money. Economic exploitation was the main motive of the British people, and that's why they have implemented so many number of policies in order to exploit the wealth of our country. And the different sectors of our society has got affected by the different policies adopted by the British. People like peasants, artisans, craftsmen, the working class, the educated Indians. So almost all different sectors of society has got affected by the different policies adopted by the British, and those policies made the people very poor, because the main motive of the British people was to make money. Or in other words, economic exploitation was the main motive of the British people in India. Now the second point is about the repressive colonial policies followed by the British in India. The different viceroys who had taken charge in our country, they have implemented different policies. All those policies were just to repress the different activities of our people. Or in other words, their main intention, one another main intention of the different policies implemented by the different viceroys were to suppress the growth of nationalism. And for this purpose, they have implemented a number of policies. Let's have a few number of examples. One of the best example, Vernacular Press Act. What is meant by Vernacular Press Act? Vernacular Press Act means Indian newspapers were not permitted to publish any kinds of news which is against the British. in any language, any of the vernacular language like languages like Hindi, Marathi, Telugu, Malayalam, Tamil, Kannada, any of the languages, whoever publishing newses, they are not permitted to publish any newses against the British or British administration or British Empire. And they are not permitted to publish any newses which can urge people, which can support people to grow nationalism. So these kinds of so many restrictions were there on press. So it was one of the policies adopted by the British, that is Vernacular Press Act. And second one is Indian Arms Act. Any European can carry any kind of arms or any kind of weapons without any kind of legal procedures, but Indians were not permitted to carry any kind of arms or weapons without the permission of the government. Such kinds of number of acts were implemented by the British, and it was just for repressing the activities of the Indians, and it was just to support the British administration. And the third point is about socio-religious reform movements. In our lower classes itself, we have studied about different socio-religious reform movement leaders like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Jyotiba Phule, and so many number of other peoples. And all these people encouraged our Indians to come out of their ignorance. As a result, some leaders have focused on social activities, some people have focused on religious activities, some people have focused on giving better education. So these kinds of social reform movements helped the Indians to come out of their ignorance, and they started to strike against the British. Once they come to know the real nature of the British, they started to protest against the British. So socio-religious reform movements have played an important role in the emergence of or in the growth of nationalism. And the last point is role of the press. As I have told you, even though the press was having number of restrictions, our Indian leaders have taken the courage to publish the news about the nationalism. They have printed leaflets and notices, and they have circulated those informations among the people, and the people who read about nationalism has got urged. They became, or they filled with the feeling of nationalism. So role of press has got an important role in the growth of nationalism. Now we are moving to the next topic, that is about the growth of political associations. When the people started to understand the feeling of nationalism, they have started to gather, they have started to form different associations. And the formation of these different associations were having different intentions. Intentions like to share the feeling of the people, or in other words, it was just to strike against the British. So basically we can say that growth of nationalism finally resulted in the growth of different small political associations. Many public public associations were started in different parts of India after 1858. You might be remembering this date. First War of Independence took place in 1857. So after 1857 means after the First War of Independence, from 1858 onwards, different public associations started to form in different part of the country, which were the foreigners of the Indian National Congress. So all these small different public associations finally merged into one mainstream or one main association, and that is Indian National Congress. So these different public associations like East India Association which formed in 1866, the next one Indian Association which formed in 1876, Indian National Conference which formed in 1883. Not only just three different forms, but more than these three, a number of different associations formed in different parts of the country. And all these different small associations finally resulted in the formation of a single formation or the single association who can strike against the British, and that's what led to the formation of Indian National Congress. So Indian National Congress became the leader of the movement against the British. Let's see some of the points about Indian National Congress. Indian National Congress was founded by A.O. Hume. A.O. Hume is the founder of Indian National Congress, and he was a retired English civil servant. He was a civil servant, or in other words we can say that who was an administrative officer under the British Empire or the British East India Company. So he helped the Indians to form an organization against the British because he was not happy with the unjust activities of the British. As a result, he had given the leadership to the Indians to form an organization against the British. It was formed on December 28th, 1885, or 28th December 1885 is being considered as the birth date of Indian National Congress. The first session of the Congress was held from December 28th to 31st. So it was almost 2 to 3 days of conference had taken place, and it was the first session of Indian National Congress, and it took place at Goguldas Tejpal Sanskrit College, Mumbai. So it was the venue where the first Indian National Congress meeting has taken place. It was under the presidency of W.C. Banerjee. W.C. Banerjee was the first president of Indian National Congress. Under his leadership, the first meeting has taken place. Indian National Congress was having or is having a number of aims, and the first aim is to promote friendly relations between nationalist political workers from different parts of the country. As we have seen, when nationalism started to grow in different parts of the country, small different associations started to form, and all those small different associations were having leaders. That means they were having political interest of our country, nationalist political interest, and those nationalist political workers should be gathered together, and those kinds of gatherings should be having normal or the general interest, a common interest for the nation. So to unify the feelings of the nation or the leaders, that was the first main aim of the Indian National Congress. And the second aim of the Indian National Congress, to develop and consolidate the feelings of national unity irrespective of caste, religion, province, etc. So different kinds of people are there with the different kinds of diversities on the basis of language, caste, color, religion, place of birth, traditions, customs, and so on. So any of such kinds of diversity should not become a barrier to the development of national feeling. So to unite them, that was the second, to develop this consolidated feeling. So that was the next aim of the Indian National Congress. And the third aim of the Indian National Congress was to formulate popular demands and present them before the government. So people will be having common interest, like peasants, like artisans or craftsmen, those business people, administrative, or the people who are working under the British government itself. All the people were having different kinds of demands, and collect or understand the popular demands of the people and present them in front of the government. So it was another aim of the Indian National Congress. And the last aim of the Indian National Congress was to train and organize public opinion in the country. As we have seen in the first chapter, that is the First War of Independence 1857, one of the drawbacks or one of the negative feature of one of the reason behind the failure of the First War of Independence was there were no leaders to organize, to take up the leadership. So here there were a number of talented people to train and organize public opinion in the country. So that's why Indian National Congress, or in other words we can say that Indian National Congress had taken the initiative to train and organize public opinion in the country against the British. So these are the points about the growth of nationalism. So with this we are winding up here. I hope that all of you were able to understand this particular chapter. Even though it was not a vivid explanation, this short explanation helped you to understand or recollect the points which you have already studied. So with the next topic, we will meet again in the next class. Till then, thank you. Bye bye.